Hello, namaste, very good evening, and welcome to Citti Media and the Festival of Bharat. Today, we are joined by somebody really special. She's an author of several books, and she's introduced history and traditions in the right way to a lot of people who are reading her books today. Please join me in welcoming Saiswaroopa Iyer ji. Namaste ji, how are you?
Namaste, Sharan. I'm good. How are you? And
I'm really good
very
too.
happy 2022.
Thank you so much. You're the first person I'm interviewing in 2022, and I know it is going to be an awesome year because of that. First of all, let me ask you, looking at the kind of books, you do have your own niche that you've carved out, and you're trying to be as creative and as approachable as possible, even to youngsters who want to learn about a lot of our own traditions and history, right? And it's not an easy thing to get them to be interested in many of these subjects. So what led to you, to your focus on this particular category of writing?
Yes, interesting question. I keep wondering about the same thing about, what exactly keeps me going because I grew up with these stories. Firstly, I grew up with Ramayana. I grew up with Mahabharata more than Ramayana, and all kinds of stories. And it's not just the religion part of it that attracted me. Of course, there is, and our religion has so many wonderful, beautiful things which keeps us going. Dharma, but it is the whole package, if I can use the word, of adventure, romance, as well as dharma, all of it bound by the tenets of dharma. And the most beautiful thing is definition of dharma keeps dynamically changing. It's always like an evergreen puzzle to find out what is dharma for not just for us, but even for the great people of our ancient past. It has always been that riddle of to find out what is their dharma, and whatever they can do to
You mean to say that
stay by it.
individually we have our own understanding of it? Because very recently somebody asked me if I was dharmic, and dharmic in what sense. So it was very difficult for me to define. Of course, I'm a dharmic person in terms
It's a
of I go to
tricky.
temples, I follow all the traditions. But of course, there are no set parameters in Sanatana Dharma, right? It's not like saying if you don't follow this, you don't become a Hindu.
That's why, I mean, the way Sanatan Dharma is very liberal in judging a person, right? Because it believes in that journey. So people are free to make their own journey of realization at their own pace,
Right.
commit themselves and stand by it, which is why Sanatana Dharma allows us that leeway, right? And coming to your question about what made me write this subject. So yes, I told you I grew up with these stories, and somewhere without my conscious effort, Mahabharata especially became a sort of a family. I can say I could feel kinship with the Pandavas, Arjuna in specific, especially during my student days. And that's what there was some kind of a bond that kept me going through a lot of tough phases. So those fusion phases where I moved from a small town to a big city, the culture shock in the late teens,
Right.
and then the whole onslaught of academia, the career, everything. At every twist and turn, I think I clung to Mahabharata.
Right.
I clung to Krishna, and that's what kept me going during all tough phases, which is why I just feel like I have a duty to share the stories from our ancient past, not just Mahabharata, but as and when I keep discovering these wonderful stories, I just find it as my calling to share them as I felt the same bonding. I would like my readers to feel the same bonding.
Right. It's such a wonderful story. And when we talk about literature and books in general, especially the Hindu right in India, or Hindus in general have an opinion that, there's an over glorification of the Mughal history and certain history, even in South India for that matter, in the Karnataka history textbooks, we always used to hear about Tipu Sultan and Bijapur Sultanate and whatnot, right? So in that sense, although there are snippets of Indian history, so to speak, but it's sort of, narrowed down to a very limited extent, where you're only introduced to a little bit of the history of the Vadayars and different other aspects of, Indian history, but you're not really exposed. So in that sense, since you're also somebody who writes a lot of books, are there any people that you would like to write about or to be seen in these history textbooks more often?
Yes, what you said about our curricular history, especially at school level, is sadly true. For one thing, I must thank my destiny. I studied in, my schooling was done in Andhra Pradesh. And when I did my schooling, somehow the government and, whatever macro changes happened, thankfully, I studied a lot more history than my peers, or when people after me did. We studied about the early Cholas, early Pallavas, and early Cholas, then the late Cholas, and then the Vijayanagara. Of course, the whole Kakatiyas and the medieval, the whole flux that southern India underwent. Then we studied about, as coming the Mughals and all, and Vijayanagara, then Mughals, and then the British, and then we studied even world history, all the Mussolini, Hitler, all those. So that way, I think I'm thankful to whoever set the syllabus when I was studying. We were exposed to, I won't say whole of the history. I mean, like, I would have been happier had we studied more about the Pratiharas, the northeastern Assami Ahom dynasty. So there's a Indian history is a galaxy. It's an endless galaxy, to be honest. So yes, it is tough to include all those topics in curriculum, but then, as you said, I am also in agreement with you. If or I just keep feeling like there was a lot of history has been purposefully not included.
Right.
One, because maybe the makers of curriculum, it's themselves, they might be ignorant, because we have this elitist attitude of certain this is like, they don't they just think of India very Delhi centrically. And there is a lot of India outside Delhi.
Right.
In fact, in our own history, how long was Delhi the capital? It was for a very brief time, it was the Pandava capital as Indraprastha. But the moment they they performed Rajasuya there, something went totally wrong. They had to go for Vanavasa. And then when they came back and won the war, they again shifted back to Hastinapura. They did not rule from Indraprastha. Then we had Ujjain and Magadha. And then Vijayanagara. And then the Maharashtra, the Maratha. So that way, I think the epicenter of Bharat kept on shifting. And that's the most beautiful part of it. We are not very, we are not very gung-ho about the lineages and the dynasties. Of course, the Puranically, the Chandravansha and Surya Vamsha, that's what defined our history. But if you observe the 1,000-year history of Bharat, our own 1,000-year-old history, it's a beautiful wave of each subaltern lord, a warlord or a peasant lord trying to rise up to the situation, fighting with the invaders. He did not think that, okay, I don't belong, I'm not a king, let me be happy farming or something like that. So every common person, they came up, they didn't think of their background or lineages. They came up, they fought the invaders, then they founded empires of their own, then their children came and expanded it. That way, each of the empires is so much more rooted than we think it is. So it requires that kind of respect for everyone, right? To include these in the curricular syllabus and to include. And I think the syllabus makers sadly did not have it for very long. Let's hope that changes for the better.
And since you write a lot of books on our traditions, that requires reading of our ancient texts too. And it's not an easy task, even though you know the language, even though you may be an accomplished historian or an author, it's very difficult to sort of scrutinize and get all these sources together. So, how do you go about, resolving this in terms of finding your primary sources and putting everything into perspective?
Yeah, Mahabharata, because four of my five books have been based on the Mahabharata. This one, so that is my first source of the, as far as the story, the main events of the story, as well as character arcs and all go.
Right.
That is my first source, and my plot forms as I give an nth reading of the Mahabharata. Then we come to the other part of it, like the world building. Right, the world building needs knowledge of topography, knowledge of geography, knowledge of how the civilizational, how the even Indian civilization is not a single civilization. It is a collection of civilizations which agreed, which found their sense of harmony. Right, the Sindhu Saraswati, the Ganga civilization, the Sindhu Saraswati, the southern civilization, all these smaller civilizations, they found a way to harmoniously coexist. They intermarried between each other. Then the children of those marriages, they came up and formed newer and more inclusive rules. So that is the foundation that Indian civilization is based on. And yes, there are good books that we can follow. Like when it comes to geography, I think I stick to Sanjeev Sanyalji's books. Both of them, they give a great perspective of how the history of our land was, our geography was formed. Then I also refer to books by David Frawley, whom we know as Pandit Vamadeva Shastri ji. His documentation of the Rishi lineages, it helps set the perspective a lot. And from a creative perspective, I love reading K.M. Munshi ji, who was the founder of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, his magnum opus Krishnavatara, and then his novels on Parashurama and the Gujarat trilogy and all that. He is a master of Adbhuta Rasa. Now, he just knows how to make us fall in love with his hero, whoever it is, whether it's Krishna or Prithvi Vallabh or whoever it is. So I think it's a collection. It's reading through these multiple sources, and I am also a huge fan of Telugu literature. Right from Potana's Andhra Mahabhagavatam and the Andhra Mahabharatam and those prabandhas which were composed during the era of Sri Krishna Devaraya, they have a very nice way of braiding together the Puranic incidents along with their own contemporary issues, whatever issues would have existed in 15th, 16th centuries. They made that, actually, we think that mythological fiction is a big thing now, but it has been a big thing throughout our literary history.
Is that
so? People used to take up a historic incident from the Puranas, and then they used to build their own world and story to make it into a full-blown work. It's been there since Kalidasa, since the days of Kalidasa itself. It's just that in the English language, we are seeing it in this last 30-40 years probably.
So it's very interesting, and the world is also seeing a lot of political movements. There are waves of feminism happening in the West, and India, I think, as a country, especially with our own Indic philosophy, we don't subscribe to a lot of values and principles that the West may find very convenient to them. So in that sense, since feminism is a hot topic that everybody is discussing, how do you think feminism was as a concept in ancient India?
Ancient India, I think matriarchy as well as patriarchy both existed, and both did not have a problem with each other. From the Mahabharata, when we follow Arjuna's pilgrimage, we see a variety of women, each of them unapologetically sticking to her own sampradaya or civilization with a lot of pride. Like yes, Draupadi. I mean, nothing needs to be said about Draupadi. We all know
Yeah.
about her. Then Arjuna travels to a place where the Nagas are living. Then Ulupi, she almost kidnaps him
Yeah.
in the night and says she's a widow. She's a widow who
Right.
almost kidnaps Arjuna and says that I want a son from you, and you don't have to take any responsibility. It's just I, who want a son like you.
Yeah.
And Arjuna agrees, and this is patriarchy again. And
Right.
the Airavan, who is the son of Arjuna and Ulupi, stays with Ulupi. He only comes at last to participate in the war. And then we
Right.
come to Chitrangada. Chitrangada is the only daughter of her father. So her father is very open in setting a condition that she's my putrika. So she's my only daughter. So a son born to her is technically my son. So he'll stay here. He'll become the king after me. You are welcome to visit us whenever you want, but you cannot take away my daughter and her son with you. Arjuna agrees for that. And then he marries Subhadra, who is again conventionally, she belongs to what we subscribe to popularly, right? So that way, India is an amalgamation of multiple belief systems, and we believed in role rather than position. Right, a role comes with power as well as duty. And coming to feminism, right?
Right.
If we observe the history of Western feminism, Western patriarchy was a very oppressive form of state. That if you go say even 100 years behind Victorian as well as American history, like women did not have the right to vote, women did not have the right to have a bank account. It's like it's hard to imagine their lives,
Correct.
right? So feminism or some kind of a that movement which included suffrage and all, it was sorely needed there.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas you come here, we are very comfortable with women having their agency and freedom since the ancient times. We have somebody like Savitri, whose father says, ki, I am not able to find a guy who deserves you. So why don't you tour along the land? You take some soldiers with you, you tour along the land and you choose your husband. How many fathers have the courage to tell that to their daughters today?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Correct.
that way, I think, Mahabharata or pre-Mahabharata times were much more feminist, than the way we are in 20th century, 21st
Right.
century.
No, if
So
Rosa Parks was in India, on a lighter note, I don't know if people will get offended. I don't think she'll be able to find a place in our BMTC buses, not because Indians are racist or patriarchal, just because they're too overcrowded, you know. So it's a different context here. But please go ahead. What were you saying?
yes, so I think seeing women in the light of power and agency is not new to our ethos. It is just that we will need to find our newer balance in the light of the whole invasions that took place in the last 500 years. We need to, India as a civilization, we became more protective and conservative in the light of those invasions. But it's high time we found back our roots and started imbibing the actual egalitarianism that existed in the ancient
Right.
past. And that's one of my biggest reasons why I choose to write mostly on little known female
Right.
protagonists.
It's extremely commendable. And in fact, one other subject that is being discussed of late is the contribution of ancient Bharat to, say, science and technology and whatnot. Because we were the pioneers of many subjects, and the world got to know about many of these subjects because of Bharat. And today we are again sort of reminiscing over what we could achieve and what potential we have as a country, right? So one of the debates that is being carried out, and there's a lot of political mockery rhetoric happening in politics today, is that I think when the Prime Minister made a statement about prosthetic procedures, then there was a whole different debate going on. But in the
When did that
context of
happen? How come I missed it?
Oh, this was way before in 2014 or something.
Okay.
Almost. So, when that Mani Shankar Iyer episodes used to happen with the Prime Minister. So all this was a part of that campaign. So they said that, we don't live in those times, and these are all just, fictional writing at best. These are all quote unquote mythology, and it's none of them are true. But is that statement true?
So let me tell an anecdote of my own writing, which resulted in this book, Kavishi, right? And this was again in 2014. I think now I remember that incident, you're quoting. So I was writing my first book, Abhaya, that's set in the Mahabharata period. It is a reimagination of Narakasura Vadha. So my heroine, in that particular scene that I was writing, my heroine is a 6-7-year-old girl. She doesn't have a mother, so her father is playing both the roles. He's trying to feed her lunch and trying to tell her story. And I wanted that story to be about a warrior woman. Something inspirational. Like my mother used to tell me stories about Jhansi Lakshmi Bai, the Rudrama Devi, Velu Nachiyar, and also I wanted the same thing for my heroine. But the trick was that this woman had to exist in the pre-Mahabharata times, and I started searching for warrior women before the Mahabharata. Then I got, Kaikeyi was a warrior woman who existed in the Ramayana, but the story takes a different turn, and that's not exactly the story that you would want to tell a 66-year-old, 7-year-old girl. And then I went, okay, Savitri. I had almost settled for Savitri, but the last ditch search was going on to find someone new. And the search results returned one document from an Israeli university, right? And that was a conference document about prosthesis. I opened it, and the first chapter was History of Prosthesis, which starts with a paragraph that effectively says, the first mention of prosthesis in world literature is in the Rig Veda, where Queen Vishpala loses her leg and is given a iron leg by Ashwini Kumaras. And there was the quote of the shloka, the sukta. Then I went and checked back, and it was a compelling story. And I felt mortified that I did not know about it. I used to have a lot of pride that I know all the stories from our past. So I felt humbled, and it was even more mortifying that I discovered her on, a character like Vishpala. I discovered her on an Israeli medical university website and not from any Indian website.
That's extremely interesting.
Yes.
You've written about the Hindu resurgence in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. But what often is asked is, that there's always this north-south divide and north-south debate that, you guys are this, we are that, and all of that is happening. But seriously speaking, what were the causes of greater success for South India's cultural preservation as compared to the North? I mean, of course, the Mughal invasions are one popular reason, but is there anything beyond that we don't know about?
I think this cultural divide, the north-south divide, is a very falsely created. This one, there used to be a great movement of people between south and north, and Mahabharata is the biggest proof of the interaction between south and north. Bhima, Sahadeva comes south, and there was a king called Malayadhwaja Pandya who fought on the side of Pandavas. He was killed in the war in the hands of Ashwathama, and after he only had a daughter, small daughter, and he did not have sons. And after the war, Yudhishthira sends Bhima saying ki, Malayadhwaja Pandya, he lost his life fighting for us, so see that his kingdom is this is not a part of Mahabharata, but I think it's a part of Jaimini Mahabharata. I can get you the source. But Yudhishthira gives a whole this one of how the southern civilization celebrates daughters, and says that, and he tells Bhima ki, see that the princess gets the education and see that she is installed as a queen, and they are not exactly orphaned because their king lost his life fighting for us. You make her the queen of that country and come back. So he tells this to Bhima or Arjuna. In that princess is none other than goddess Meenakshi of Madurai. Right. So there was a lot of interaction. But coming to your question about South preserving culture and North not doing it is a very, I would say it doesn't exist in the grassroots. All of them have preserved culture the best that they did. But there is a lot of divide of perception, the division of perception caused by, I think, the popular film industry. Somehow South India was, maybe we did some punya or something. We had very good filmmakers who have imbibed those ethos and adapted ancient stories into beautiful films, like say Maya Bazaar. We celebrate 60th anniversary of the film. Even today you see it for the 100th time, even after you know all the dialogues, it has something, you enjoy it. I doubt if somebody of that caliber existed in the North. I know we've had great filmmakers, Ramanand Sagarji, P.R. Chopra, whole Ramayana. That came a bit late. I can say in the 60s and 70s, somehow the popular industry in South India, the adaptations, the stage, theater, everything celebrated Indian culture, which led to masses also celebrating Indian culture in their own way. Of course, people who are educated, in the and who follow the sampradayas, they keep following it irrespective of whichever region they exist in. But there's a lot of gap, vacuum left in the northern film industry, which is why if you observe, Sharan, a lot of Telugu films, Tamil films get dubbed into Hindi, and they are a lot watched in the heartland than Bollywood's. Correct.
So now that you tell me, I get the distinction of where this is coming from. And I agree with you. And also, speaking about the North-South divide, Aryan Invasion Theory is something that's been debated for a very long time. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's a very unscientific theory.
Right.
In fact, while researching for Avishi, I went through a lot of papers. I thought, okay, let me not be jingoistic. Let me be open to AIT. Probably it is all scientifically researched by, so and so many Indologists, and they may have something that rings true. That was my, I really, approached it with a very open mind and started reading about this one, because Vishpala's story is a very old story. And this is one of those rare stories which does not get a mention, get a retelling. Any Vedic story, most of the Vedic stories get a retelling in either Mahabharata, Ramayana, or Puranas, where some rishi, recollects. Like Ramayana gets retold in the Mahabharata at least thrice. Right. That way, but this is one story which never got retold. So, which is why I thought it has to be really, really old. So let me see, are they Dravidians, or are they those Indus Valley guys? And is this some Aryan thing happened? Because Ashwini Kumaras, it has to be an Aryan story. So let us see how, how and where they have come from. Have they invaded India? So I started reading, and there was one paper about what establishes invasion. Right. The archaeological proof for invasion was 27 skeletons. Right. That was the proof. Yeah. On which the whole entire Aryan invasion theory is based. Right. Okay. 27 skeletons is not a proof for an invasion. It may be a proof for say a drought or something like that, or people migrated from that place, and whoever could not travel were probably left along, or maybe they were criminals or something, and that people punished them, so they were left. there could be 100 explanations, but 27 skeletons is not a scientific proof for an
Yeah.
invasion,
Yeah,
right?
because you're talking about a mass migration, right, which involves
Exactly.
thousands and thousands of people.
Exactly. And the sources of those papers were also so, put together in such a hodgepodge manner.
Right.
Then, they talk about people being dark-skinned, fair-skinned. That is, that's another stupid, distinction. Like in my own family, I have a family member who was born and who lived in Mumbai for very long, and they also lived in various parts of North India, and he's really fair. His own brother, who lived in Chennai all life, is a lot of shades
I
darker
agree
than
with you, especially, I mean, down south, there is the Dravidian movement very strong even today. But then we laugh at it, right? It almost feels like it's a colonial project to divide India on racial.
So when you say Indus Valley people were dark-skinned, it doesn't make any sense. It totally doesn't make any sense. And then they said people did not, they were not violent because there were no weapons found. Okay, I mean, I believe you, people were utopian and all that, but there are bound to be animals, and people have to have weapons too.
Yeah, I mean, that's how any animal would react, right? Even if you snatch away its food, some food from orangutan, it's supposed to react in a certain way. So it's just
So if you find a settlement without weapons, it means only that the people have migrated from there. It's not like people are non-violent by nature.
Yeah. Right.
So I just found the whole paper like really funny, and then I was really angry for a couple of days after reading it, thinking, okay, these guys are idiots, but what happened to our own historians who have just taken it like, without even a level 1 scrutiny. I mean, I'm not a trained historian, Sharon, but between the lines, you can see how fantastic, just take it. It's so artificially put together theory. It is unscientific. It's not even worth being called a fantasy. Even fantasy needs a logical world building. If you go and read Western fantasies like Lord of the Rings and all that, they have a very logical world building. And these German historians, they haven't even invested that much thought into building their AIT myth around it. So I was very happy. Anyways, at the end of the day, I was so happy that I could totally trash it.
Right.
And then I reimagined the whole Saraswati civilization and placed the story at the dawn of Saraswati civilization. And then there was this paper again in 2015. It was published on Nature, where it talked about a parallel civilization happening on the banks of Ganga.
Yeah.
So that means that we were there. We were there all the time. We were there in all the river belts, and we had our own civilization.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sharon. We discussed a lot of interesting things today. I hope viewers find it interesting.
They will, and viewers, we'll put the links to Saiswaroopa Ji's books in the description below, so you can find a lot of her writings there. Please do buy her books. They're they're a product of a lot of time and hard work, and I think you'll all find it very interesting. Thank you so much, Ji. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we'll catch up soon for a coffee since we're in the same city.
Yes, let's do that. And thanks a lot for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Happy 2022, everyone. Let's move forward with positivity.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.